Humanist Perspective, presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following our few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Humanist Perspective. My name is Jim Dugan. I'm your host for this month. My guest this evening is Amy Irvin. Ms. Irvin holds a Master of Science in Social Work from the University of Louisville and has worked in community and union organizing. In 2012, she became one of the founding board members of the New Orleans Abortion Fund, serving as the fund's first intake coordinator and representing the fund in coordination with other groups, such as the Legislative Agenda for Women. She's now the group's executive director. The New Orleans Abortion Fund is a 501c3 nonprofit organization providing financial help to women who cannot afford the full cost of an abortion. The NOAF affirms a woman's right to control her body and her destiny and works to ensure that all people have access to quality medical care regardless of their economic situation. Amy, thank you so much for being with us this evening. And I guess we'll just have to start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about the New Orleans Abortion Fund.
Well, thanks for having me, Jim. I'm really appreciative of this opportunity to talk a little bit about the organization. As you mentioned, we are a 501c3 community organization, and we provide financial assistance to women seeking abortion care here in Louisiana. We partner with the local clinic, Women's Health Care Center, and her sister clinic, Delta in Baton Rouge. So we coordinate pledges on behalf of the women that we speak to on our hotline, and make pledges as we have finances and money available.
Finances are always going to be a little bit tight, I would imagine.
Of course. You can imagine that fundraising around this issue is a bit difficult sometimes, although there's a lot of support here in New Orleans for the work that we do. But we have assisted more than 800 women since we began making pledges, but our average pledge is just $100. So that is just a drop in the bucket when it comes to the cost of an abortion, which starts between $500 and $600. So we are serving the neediest people in our community and helping them as best we can, but certainly with more money and more dollars, we could help women with deeper or additional monies, and certainly help other women as well.
So tell us a little bit about the women who need help from NOAF. People have health care. Some people have health care. We know that's a changing situation
right
now. Sometimes it's covered, sometimes it's not. I'm not an expert in this. Most of our viewers are not. You probably know a lot more about that than we do.
Well, so the folks that we help are very diverse, as is our community. The average client's age is 27, and the age range is 14 to 43. So we're assisting people from a wide spectrum over the course of their lives. More than 2/3 of the women we serve are mothers, about 68%, and 82% of our clients are religious, which I think is a very important point to make, given the community in which we live. Very particularly Catholic here in South Louisiana, but also Baptist in the northern part of the state. So also, NOAF clients are incredibly resourceful. 2/3 are employed and or students, and we help them as best we can, given the monies that we have. Louisiana has some of the most restrictive laws on the books. Unfortunately, I think of Louisiana as sort of the petri dish in which all these anti-choice laws that are imposed across the country kind of oftentimes find their, first homes here, in which legislators introduce these bills and sort of test out messaging and see how they progress through the House and the Senate. So unfortunately, we have many of the most restrictive laws in place here, which adds additional burdens and barriers for women seeking health care. Some of those laws include a parental consent required for minors. So either you have to have the consent of a parent or a legal guardian. Otherwise, you have to go before a judge here in the parish in which you're having the abortion care, or in the parish in which you live. And so you can imagine how daunting that might be for minors living outside of Orleans Parish.
And would that be age 18 be the dividing line for that?
Yes, and there's some new legislation about that I might talk about later in the program. But there is no state funding for abortion services. There's no insurance coverage for elective abortions. There are now just 3 clinics in the entire state. Unfortunately, last week, Bossier City Medical Group closed. That was up in Bossier City, and so we're left now with just 3 clinics, one in Shreveport, one in Baton Rouge, and one in New Orleans. So that in and of itself is a barrier, in that if you're seeking abortion care and you live outside of these major cities, that means additional travel, time off from work, lost wages, time away from your family, probably additional childcare perhaps. So it's added cost to an already expensive procedure that isn't covered by insurance. Some limitations at the clinic include a 24-hour waiting period. You may have heard, or some of your viewers may have heard about the mandatory 3-day waiting period that was passed last year and signed by our governor. That is being litigated. If that were to go into effect, that would put us in a very small class of just 5 or 6 other states that have that sort of lengthy waiting period. A provider must amplify the fetal heartbeat if it's present. And providers must read from a counseling script written by legislators, not doctors. So they're using a lot of biased information to explain fetal development and as a way to dissuade women from having the procedure that they want.
So I would like to amplify maybe on a few of those points if I got them right. There's a lot of information there. Probably compared to most people's perception, certainly from my perception, your typical client who needs help paying for abortion services is probably a little bit older and a little bit more employed and a little bit more insured than most of us would assume.
Well,
most of us assuming that they're probably like 16 and destitute or something like that.
No, these are on the majority, young professionals who are working. Perhaps they're working in the service industry or part-time jobs, and maybe they have a full-time job with insurance. But unfortunately, because of state law, no state policy, insurance policy, will cover an elective abortion, and neither will Medicaid. So it's essentially a cash transaction. You either have to have that money saved away in a savings account, or be able to put it on a credit card to pay for the health care.
And of course, when most people need it, this needs to happen within a relatively short window of time. The sooner the better, medically, of course.
Yes, exactly. And unfortunately, the longer that you wait, or the longer that you have to put off getting the procedure because you have to raise money, the more expensive it becomes. So that's oftentimes the situation in which we find the people that are calling our hotline is that they're aware of how much money they need, but they only have a small portion of that. And so while we're able, to make a pledge, often it isn't enough to cover the full cost. And so we do sort of talk through some strategies about raising more money. I served as the first intake coordinator of the New Orleans Abortion Fund. I've take occasional shifts on the hotline, and so I think some of the most important work that we do is speaking directly with the women that we're serving and hearing their stories. I've talked with women that have pawned things. They've sold things off. Of course, we know that they're putting off paying rent and putting off paying bills. They're buying fewer groceries. I remember several years ago talking with a woman who, in good New Orleans fashion, was making up plates of food and selling at $5 a plate and $6 with a drink to her neighbors to raise some money for herself.
I think that's really something most of us wouldn't know much about, would be that human interest aspect of it, which you're in direct contact with, and other people in your organization are going to be in direct contact with, those very personal stories of individual women who are struggling with the situation that they find themselves in.
Yeah, I mean, story sharing is not a new concept, and certainly over the decades, we've heard about abortion speak-outs and things of that nature, but I think that it's kind of come back around again, in which we're recognizing the importance and the strategic aspect of sharing our stories. And so one of the emerging programs that NOFA is putting together is called NOFA Out Loud, and we're hosting small house parties among our volunteers and our supporters in showing videos of stories or reading stories from people that have had abortions, and having conversations about those stories and our own personal experiences, whether it's as someone who's had an abortion or you're a clinic escort and so you're outside the clinic on a Friday afternoon seeing the protesters dissuade and shame women or their partners who are going to the clinic. So I think that one of the things that has made this work very difficult and the procedure itself very shaming over the decades is that most women don't feel like they're able to tell other people. We know that 1 in 3 U.S. women will have an abortion by the time she's 45, and so everyone knows someone that's had an abortion probably, but you may have never had that conversation, and so you don't know the circumstances in which she found herself or her friends or her families, how they helped her or assisted her, or what the experience was. So I'm really excited for that program. We've had 2 small parties so far, and we're scheduled to do 2 more.
I have to say that to me it sounds like this kind of speak out, is that what you called it, where people are telling their stories, would be the seeds of a tremendous documentary, a very, very emotionally impactful documentary, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Who's
you want to do one?
well, let's plant the seed for that and see. But it really sounds like something that would be worth doing.
Well, that's certainly maybe a long-term vision for this program. I certainly want to be able to begin having conversations which are very rich and informative in and of themselves. Maybe identify folks that would like to be more involved in NOF's work as a volunteer, perhaps become more engaged in advocacy, and maybe begin putting together short videos or clips in which of a Louisiana women who have had abortion care, to begin to share those out. So yes, maybe with some additional funding, documentaries in the works.
Any good documentarians out there want to do this one, talk to you.
Exactly.
One technical detail I wanted, because it just occurred to me, I was thinking about when you talked about insurance, it doesn't pay for abortion. You said that's only insurance that comes from the state of Louisiana. Is that all insurance that's in the state? I'm a little confused about the difference between private and publicly funded insurance.
Yeah, there's no state funding for abortion care.
Okay,
No aspects, not even an ultrasound or the blood work or any aspect of abortion care is covered.
That's quite a bit.
Yes. The legislators are very serious
in trying to prevent this, and and a lot of this is under various kinds of litigation around the country in different places. It'll take years to sort all this out, and of course, every time we turn around, some legislature somewhere will be throwing a new curveball at this to layer more on, and I'm sure under the current administration we'll be having that from Washington as well.
Yes. Well-
where do you see the future? What can you, closer to the ground, where do you see this going? How the accessibility, availability of abortion services in Louisiana?
Well, I've been asked this question about the impact on abortion access here in Louisiana under a Trump administration. And certainly with the nomination and confirmation of Judge Gorsuch, that is alarming. I heard on the radio this morning that he took the bench today and heard his first cases. President Trump's recent ruling that allows states to defund Planned Parenthood is also alarming and will have impact in this state, although the Planned Parenthood here doesn't offer abortion care, but they do offer a wide variety and a continuum of care and services here. So, but we're already working in a very hostile landscape in Louisiana. And so while it would have been preferable to have a President Clinton and a friendlier White House, perhaps she would have nominated a friendlier Supreme Court justice. Much of the work that is going on here in Louisiana will continue.
It's at the state level, and you've
Yes.
just always been up against tremendous resistance here.
Exactly. And so I imagine that legislators will continue to introduce anti-choice legislation. We will continue to do outreach and education and try to engage our supporters and those who are interested in talking more about this issue. I think one of the silver linings of the election of President Trump is that so many people have come out of the shadows and wanting to become engaged and become involved, whether it's wanting to volunteer with NOFE or provide a donation or become involved in a related issue. We see so many people getting involved in the indivisible groups or the March On groups, or there's just a number of organizations that have cropped up, and also many people that are just plugging into existing organizations like ours or Independent Women's Organization, the National Organization for Women, National Council of Jewish Women. I mean, there's a host of organizations that have been doing this work for many, many, many years.
So I'm curious how a woman finds you, or you find your clients, because you mentioned a lot of women, by the time you talk to them, have already been working at trying to raise funds, and they probably don't even know that your organization exists. How do you connect?
So we do have a Facebook page. We also have a website in which you can read up on the restrictions that are in place and sort of get numbers, telephone numbers for the clinics. But at the primary way in which people would find out about us is through the clinic. So anyone who indicated that they were short of money or needed some financial help, the staff there would direct them to our services. And for those who would like the hotline number, I can give that. It's 504-363-1112. It's a hotline number. We have a dedicated group of volunteers that answer those calls within 24 hours. So you can be guaranteed that someone will try to reach you within that time and sort of walk you through the steps of how we might be able to help you and what you can expect possibly at the clinic.
It's a very daunting task. So this must keep you very busy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just the fundraising and the dealing with individual clients, but all the coordinating and the many other efforts, working with a lot of other groups. Our core work is providing financial assistance, but in that work, of course, we do a lot of fundraising. We have several different annual fundraisers. We're coming up on our Game-a-thon this Sunday. It'll be at Shamrock at 4 o'clock, April 23rd. And it is our largest fundraiser. Last year we raised $17,000. That's quite a bit.
This year we're on track to raise $20,000, so I'm really excited about that. We're just $700 away, so it's very exciting. And people might be asking, what is a game-a-thon, right? So it's a sort of pattern after a bowl-a-thon. But because the local bowling alley wouldn't support us, we went down the street to Shamrock, ironically the old bowling alley, and we now have a game-a-thon. So we're playing ping pong and pool and darts, and so the event on the 23rd is sort of the culmination of months of fundraising online, and folks have formed teams, and they're basically fundraising as individuals and as teams and raising money, and then on Sunday we'll get together and celebrate. If people are interested and they haven't raised or joined a team, they can participate with a donation of $30 on Sunday and be able to play and participate. And we also give prizes. So we give awards for the most spirited team, the highest scoring team, the highest fundraiser individual, and the highest fundraiser team. So we really try to make it fun, and I think that's a value of ours. We know that this issue is sometimes hard to talk about. But I think, so we try to make it accessible to people, the language in which we use, the way that we do this work. So we do have fun. I mentioned earlier that I've been walking around in a vulva costume sometimes at different marches and different meetings to sort of like engage people in that way. I mean, New Orleanians love a costume, and those costumes have really been well received. But there is a serious side to this, and we always get there.
You get there, but you have to balance it out a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
Speaking of marching, you had mentioned to me that there's the upcoming March for Science that's coming is going to be something you or your whole group is going to be participating in. What?
Well, we'll be participating, but also I'll be speaking.
Oh, okay.
At the March for Science, and so. I'm sure some people might be thinking, well, why is an abortion access advocate speaking at a March for Science? But yet, it's oftentimes the denial of science or the substitution of junk science that legislators use to pass anti-choice legislation. And so I'll be speaking about that.
About when a fetus could feel pain, or a lot of disinformation deliberately distributed about that. Yeah,
the misinformation that abortion leads to breast cancer, or women, need counseling prior to abortion care. That might be the case for some women, but not all women. And unfortunately, unlike other medical fields in which much of the interactions that you have with doctors is done through telemedicine. Here in Louisiana, it has to be face-to-face counseling with an OBGYN or family practice medicine physician. And so, that just adds on another layer of difficulty for women to have to come in for that appointment when, in other circumstances, you could just do it online.
What are some of the other organizations that you cooperate with? I think we mentioned which one did we mention?
The law.
Law, okay. That one. Legislative Agenda for Women, and some others as well. Tell us about that.
So the New Orleans Abortion Fund is part of the Legislative Agenda for Women. The primary issues that coalition works on is often, or it has been in the past, Medicaid expansion, equal pay, minimum wage, comprehensive age-appropriate sex education, domestic violence. But we also are a co-founder or co-convener of the Louisiana Coalition for Reproductive Freedom, which is working to address reproductive health care specifically, like abortion care and some of the other related issues that come before us. So there are more than 17 groups involved in that coalition, including some of the ones that I mentioned, IWO, NCJW, NOW, League of Women Voters, but also many student organizations that have cropped up over the course of the last few years. So the Students United for Reproductive Justice is an undergraduate student group on Tulane's campus. the Social Workers United for Reproductive Freedom, what used to be called LSRJ, the Lawyers for Reproductive Justice.
Okay.
They've rebranded themselves. I'm really proud of the work that NOVE does with students. We support and act, I act as a liaison to those groups who are interested in doing this work or talking more about abortion access. I'm also working with Tulane University's Newcomb College Institute with 4 different interns who are developing out some different programs, including the NOVE Out Loud program. So we have a strong relationship with Newcomb College. Our co-founder, Jesse Niablis, was doing an internship there when we started, and some of our very earliest donors and outreach events were there. So they've been a great partner.
One thing that struck me when you were talking about some of that, dovetailing with the March for Science and the need for scientifically accurate information about reproduction in general, reproductive health care. If I'm not mistaken, Louisiana is one of those odd states about that. Right? We don't have a law that requires medically accurate and complete sexual education in schools.
No, it's not mandated. No, in fact, Louisiana has some of the worst health outcomes for women and families. There is only one OBGYN for every 13,000 women in Louisiana. We have some of the highest rates of teen pregnancy, some of the highest rates of infant mortality, high rates of STD and HIV, and yet we don't have comprehensive, age-appropriate, mandated sex education for our young people here.
And that's a problem. And many of the groups that you work with actually focus very specifically on that, like NARAL or Planned Parenthood and groups like that.
Sure, and locally, I think the organization that does a lot of that work is the Institute for Women in Ethnic Studies.
We probably have less than 1 minute to go.
Already?
I think, yes. A final message? What would you like? What do people need to know about NOAF, the New Orleans Abortion Fund?
Well, I would just say that we are, last week, the Louisiana legislative session began. There are 2 anti-choice bills that are before us that we'll be working. So if you're interested in getting involved in that work, I would just really recommend and ask that folks go onto our website, neworleansabortionfund.org, and sign up for our newsletter or advocacy alerts so that you're aware of the bills and how they're moving through either the Senate or the House, and we'll be making different asks as the bills progress. We'll be issuing an advocacy alert tomorrow asking supporters to call senators to pull bills.
Very good to stay informed. Amy Irvin, thank you so much for being with us and helping educate us.
Thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate it.